After a singular night, too many of tolerating the impish irregularity of Corksark's moon, Corksark's sun truly was a sight for sore eyes, though this was partly because Reginald had been staring at it for 5 minutes straight. It was fair to say that he wasn't going to take it for granted ever again. Wingman felt that the need had probably arisen to snap Reginald out of his appreciative trance. "Hey, Reg? Oh, right, Voltergeist. Yes, let's go and snuff out that mistake of Corksarkish nature." Voltergeist's address, according to Reginald's instincts and corroborated by the piece of paper to hand, was Number 1 of 1 at Green Pastures Gate. Population 2. The dubious claim of a second resident was probably Voltergeist, pretending to have either a friend or a wife. At any rate, Reginald and Wingman had never been down this neck of the woods before. Whilst the name sounded awfully inviting at first glance, one had to bear in mind that Corksark had a tendency towards flattering nomenclature for its residential areas. There was some chance of this place being an avenue of loveliness, though it was a little more realistic to expect something akin to the offspring of a cesspit and a swamp. Reginald and Wingman set off with due dutifulness. In usual fashion, Wingman had to maintain a light jog just to keep up with Reginald's natural stride, which normally made for fantastic exercise for our diminutive dude, but he wasn't exactly in the best physical condition of his life at the present time. As he began to pant a little, then began to pant a lot, Reginald saw fit to look over at Wingman to check on him. Wingman's posture and facial expression had now started to resemble the look of a constipated runner in the last third of a marathon. This clearly wouldn't do. Reginald decided to give him a special treat. "Who wants to engage in piggyback mode?" Wingman suddenly looked like an excited but exhausted puppy, and so Reginald graciously took him upon his shoulders. Understand, however, that this wasn't solely a periodic bonding exercise whenever Reginald had firmly zero expectations of running into any women. It was also a tactical configuration that afforded them a fractionally higher viewpoint, a bit like a bromantic periscope. And for the first time ever, it actually proved useful. Wingman spotted a just about discernible shortcut by way of a wooden bridge as they changed course to go and take an up-close gander. Suffice it to say that this was no tangible rainbow of a bridge plucked straight out of a fairy tale. In respecting reality, it was more, well, to say that it was merely on the well-worn side would fall somewhere between an understatement and an outright lie. But appearances can be deceiving, and Reginald didn't wish to judge the serviceability of the bridge too readily. Rather judiciously, he instead referred to the nearby signpost, which said, "Last maintenance, 15 years ago. Next suggested maintenance, 15 years' time." Reginald was nothing if not a very manly human calculator. He took into account his undisclosed body weight, the time frame of bridge repairs, and the professional optimism of whoever put up the signpost. The theoretical margins left something to be desired, but he probably would be able to traverse this suspended pile of crap just fine and not have it crumble like a very poorly manufactured biscuit. He would have preferred to err on the side of caution and utilize his state-of-the-art shin boosters to make the crossing, but as rotten luck would have it, the boosters were presently unable to acquire a robust enough internet connection due to the unfamiliar location. But just as Reginald was about to set foot on wood that had seen vastly better days, he had quite the brainwave. Walk on his tippy toes like a ballerina, thereby substantially reducing his effective weight. Oh, there was definitely no stopping him now. He'd sooner die than decline to cross that bridge. Wingman gave him a thumbs up of encouragement, and away he went for about 3 promising seconds. Scintillating shit-shakers, no! The bridge then betrayed his leftover knowledge of school physics and broke in the manner of a biscuit, both poorly manufactured and pissed at its own existence. Wingman couldn't bring himself to watch. Oh, the calamity, as gravity proceeded to do its thing and plunge the poor fellow into the gentle brook just below, which meant that he had no choice but to use the complimentary ladder affixed to the far side with its embarrassingly small rungs, and all while cold and dripping with brook water. He felt pathetic as he struggled to fit his wet, beefy plates of meat onto each maliciously undersized rung. This was no way for a superhero to be taking a shortcut, but needs must. Wingman naturally followed via the same grotty means, albeit a lot less dramatically. Back onto terra firma once more, they took a moment to compose themselves. Reginald soon made the first comment in the interests of beginning to mentally suppress all that had just happened. "Look there. I think it's just up ahead." They appeared to be on the cusp of a bizarrely localized biome, one that was desperately dreary, to say the least. As they ventured closer, it was as clear as day, in a manner of speaking, that they had reached Green Pasture's Gate, as declared on a prominent, rain-spattered, obsidian-toned sign situated precisely where the rainfall begins. It was a veritable gloom fest, with the surrounding trees all uniformly drooping, as if they'd rather be turned into ice pop sticks or even sheets of printer paper than spend another day in the antithesis of paradise. A few more paces onwards, they were met with their main obstacle, a structure that presented as something between a portcullis and a turnstile. Reginald was getting increasingly impetuous with each step closer to Voltergeist, and wasn't in the mood for such obstacles, as he mindlessly hammer-fisted the first big red button he saw. A rain-filled moment passed, and then they heard the crackling of an intercom system that had been obscured by one of the drooping trees that had given up on being a tree. Reginald yanked the obtrusive branches out of the way in preparation for some low-definition dialogue. The yapping sound of some contemptuous creature, not to be confused with Voltergeist himself, came through first, as Voltergeist could then be heard trying to control the kerfuffle. "Oh, will you pipe down, Snuggle Duster, or there will be no filet mignon for you come lunchtime." Voltergeist then cleared his throat. "Yes, who goes there?" Wingman then quickly tugged on Reginald's forearm with a crucial piece of tactics that warranted a whisper. "If he knows it's us, he'll either lock us out or set a trap for us." Reginald nodded in agreement, quickly reaching for the voice changer panel on his helmet and proceeding with a rather delicious line of subterfuge. "Oh, hi there, mister. Just some Girl Scouts here with some good old-fashioned corks are okay. As the narrator, I'm not saying that. One moment. Some Girl Scouts here with some good old-fashioned corky cookies. We've brought them in a special rain-resistant box, specially." It would have been the perfect line had Reginald not fat-fingered the voice changer panel and accidentally engaged the Mexican crooner voice option. Fortunately, Voltergeist's apparent sweet tooth seemed to get the better of his judgment. "I must say, the Girl Scouts are very broadly inclusive these days, but those corky cookies do sound good, so come on in, senor." The portcullis turnstile emitted a click as it unlocked. The intrepid twosome stepped through, and there it apparently was. A little hut bordering on tiny, with a quaint little house number plaque that said, "Number 1 of 1. This was beginning to feel distinctly easy. Reginald liked a challenge, but he liked easy quests even more, and so this was right up his alley. Naturally, he barged open the front door like a boss, but there was virtually nothing there, except for what looked like a trash chute. On closer inspection, there was a notice. "Please keep arms tucked in at all times, and kindly close the door behind you." The both of them peered inside what looked to be the shittiest slide ever conceived. It would seem that Voltergeist had an affinity for unconventional interior design choices. But in fairness, descending in such a manner into a person's property proper does make for a potentially effective talking point. Reginald took on a posture that made him as aerodynamic as possible as he valiantly went first, with Wingman close behind. It wasn't the caliber of ride that naturally elicited a "wee," but it wasn't all that terrible either, credit where it's due, and then they popped out the other end. But they'd ended up somewhere particularly unexpected, finding themselves at the very top of an abandoned bell tower by the shoreline. They just couldn't be bothered to question it. All that mattered in this moment was that Voltergeist's inner dwelling couldn't be far now. But just a touch disconcertingly, they did notice that they were stood upon a trap door. And then the bell rang. Bong, bong, and so on and so forth. Reginald and Wingman were dealt dire doses of decibels that caused the both of them to black out. Reginald was the first to begin regaining consciousness. He was still in something of a daze as he tried to make sense of the situation at hand. The first thing that he perceived, aside from being stuck in place, was the suspicious sound of vigorous, indulgent, sweaty exertion that he could tell was coming from Voltergeist. Reginald hoped with every fiber of his being that it wasn't what it sounded like. With a gulp, he took the risk of focusing his gaze in the direction of the sounds. Oh, he'd never been so relieved. Panic most definitely over. What Voltergeist was actually doing was a purposefully different kind of rapid rubbing of his body against a giant piece of nylon. Reginald then deduced the deranged ingenuity on display. This was how Voltergeist harnessed his electricity, building up a static charge that he stores in his scraggly metallic hands. Oh, it was both unexpectedly brilliant and horribly unglamorous at the same time, but most thankfully still a far better sight than the other envisaged scenario that would have left Reginald bereft of his very soul. Wingman had now started to come around. They were most certainly in an overzealously vinegary, unappetizing pickle here, with the both of them rendered helpless by virtue of Voltergeist's most dastardly devising ever, a sofa so sinkably soft as to be inescapable. Flailing their arms and kicking their legs around seemed to only deepen their predicament. And rather tauntingly, Reginald's minigun was also being held captive, upon a separate, somewhat smaller but equally inescapable sofa just to their left. The surrounding room appeared to be something between a decrepit old building, barely worthy of squatting in, and a highly improvised yet sufficiently nefarious chamber. The stained glass windows, with imagery depicting Voltergeist in different yoga positions, lent both an added touch of psychological tortuousness and oddly artful character. Reginald started off the obligatory conversation. "So, is this how you treat all your guests? Otherwise, do tell as to how you knew it was us." "I suppose I can provide you with a bit of exposition, as the personable host I always endeavor to be. I shan't lie to you boys, your deception was nothing short of masterclass, and I feel no shame in having bought it. But your undoing was the fact that I'm a binocular aficionado, and that I always like to take a cheeky peek through my favorite peeping hole to see the look of wholesome delight on my visitors' faces upon seeing my quaint little house number plaque." Reginald clenched his jaw, withholding the admission that it was all so obvious in retrospect. Voltergeist continued to pace theatrically. "But now that I have you in my clutches, let me just elaborate by saying how thoroughly disappointed I am that it turned out to be you two on this occasion, as I was looking damn well forward to those corky cookies." Voltergeist gave both Reginald and Wingman a swift shock. His left scraggly metallic hand directed at Wingman, and his right scraggly metallic hand directed at Reginald. But rather unforgivably, he then administered a quick, spicy spark upon Reginald's minigun. Reginald snapped with fury at Voltergeist. "You leave Batilda out of this." Voltergeist wrapped his scraggly metallic fingers together in unapologetic delight, savoring his complete control of the situation. But just then, Wingman had an inspired thought. He leant over towards Reginald and gave another one of his just-in-the-nick-of-time tactical whispers. "Reg, your staff." "Yes?" What about it? If I've read correctly between the lines, just maybe it possesses some special ability to save the day. I respect your perspicacity, my good man, but I have to disappoint. Its faithfulness as a beguiling accessory aside, it serves me only as a bespoke backscratcher. Oh, poopy. And thus, that was that. Voltergeist had the categorical upper hand, and he really had won. Or had he? No, he really had. That is, until Snuggleduster suddenly appeared at the doorway. It was now 5 minutes past lunchtime, and he hadn't yet been served his filet mignon. This meant that he was extra feisty. Voltergeist was forced to admit to himself that he probably should have locked the door before getting the main event underway. He tried verbally reasoning with his taxonomically ambiguous pet of distinctly doggy vibes. Not now, Snuggleduster. I've already left you a chalice full of soup of the day. Be grateful for that, and let me finish having my moment. And that was all the provocation Snuggleduster needed to run over and get up in Voltergeist's business, with his really annoying yapping and such. Voltergeist was overwhelmed. God damn it, Snuggleduster. He backed up onto his villainous control panel and inadvertently hit the big green button for releasing the sofa's ejector springs. Reginald, Wingman, and Batilda went flying in unison up into the air and onto the freedom-flavored floor. The ball was in Reginald's court now. Reginald picked up said ball that just happened to be sitting within reach, gave it a squeaky squeeze, and threw it into the corner of the room for Snuggleduster to go fetch and bugger off for a moment. With that incessant yapping on pause, Reginald smashed his fist through one of the eye-offending stained glass windows and grasped Voltergeist by the scruff of his neck, holding him over the open ledge above the choppy waters below. Voltergeist surmised that he probably wasn't going to be given the benefit of a few extra moments for some bastardized Deus Ex Machina moment to play to his advantage this time. Or so he thought. Wingman all of a sudden piped up at Reg. Reg, wait! If you dispose of him, you might as well dispose of me too. I am no better than he is. Reginald's befuddlement was almost palpable. Just what are you talking about, Wingman? Wingman knew rationally that this wasn't the time for this, but Jonathan's belch-tainted spellcasting seemed to have done something immensely inconvenient to him. In this narrator's educated opinion, Jonathan had probably uttered the incantation of, "May particles gilded beat your unsightly affliction," but with the unhelpfully added curse of, "May particular guilt be your untimely affliction." God damn it, Jonathan. Reginald and Voltergeist were now equally invested in what else Wingman had to say, whilst Voltergeist discreetly helped himself to a foothold on the ledge. Reginald pressed on the matter. "Come on, man, out with it." Wingman lowered his head as low as it would go. "The wobbly stool." "What?" "It was me. I put it there that fateful day." Reginald hadn't yet fully processed what he had just heard. Wingman elaborated a tad more. I originally sat upon it myself before you had arrived at the inn. I then swapped it for a nice and even one, the one that was originally destined for your buttocks. It's because of me that you have wobbly stool syndrome." Time suddenly stood still for Reginald. He felt weak, stricken with the highest order of disillusionment. He didn't even have the strength to maintain his grip on Voltergeist. He just became as stiff as a drink and fell off the ledge and into the aforementioned choppy waters below. Wingman froze in shock. Even Voltergeist was thoroughly speechless in this moment, not knowing quite what to say, just as Snuggleduster came running back with his toy ball a little too enthusiastically, launching Voltergeist clean off the ledge and into the doubly aforementioned choppy waters below. Wingman overcame his momentary shock and then jumped after them, and Snuggleduster farted. The time had come for Wingman to really rise to the occasion and be the full-fledged sidekick that Reginald deserved. He cut through the water like a knife through a briny, undulating cake in his unbridled efforts to find Reginald, only to then notice that Reginald wasn't in any trouble whatsoever and had actually just reached the shoreline. Voltergeist was quite a different matter, however, as Wingman caught sight of him upside down in the water and unable to reorient himself, destined to become the only ever corksarker, and perhaps the only person in the entire universe for the rest of time, to drown of his own tomfoolery at a perfect 180-degree angle at surface level. Oh, even Voltergeist didn't deserve such a fate, Wingman reasoned. Just about anybody burdened with such a little shit for a pet could understandably turn evil out of cumulative madness over time. And so he went and grabbed the poor schmuck and proceeded to make it to mutual safety. What a day it had been, and it wasn't even mid-afternoon. Wingman looked anxiously over at Reginald, wondering if Reginald would even speak to him. "Reg, I'm ever so sorry. I never meant for any of it." "Oh, that's okay. That impromptu dunk into the ocean did the trick in rebooting my mind. I was admittedly being a bit of a queen of dramatics. 'Twas just quite the surprise, is all." Wingman was truly thankful to hear it. Reginald then got up and began walking ominously over to where Voltergeist was attempting to make himself as enclosed as a clam. Wingman stopped Reginald in his tracks. "Reg, wait. Wingman, this had better not be another gargantuan reveal that brings me within an inch of an aneurysm. No, not as such. It's just I've come to realize that Jonathan might be right about your heroically bumbling prospects never changing. I mean, we were literally saved today by, scientifically speaking, a little four-legged runt, a creature that makes Voltergeist look like an exemplary being by comparison. Extrapolate on your point already, or I shall lose interest. If you so much as try to punch Voltergeist in the face, something will go catastrophically wrong one way or another. It's the elementary mechanics of a curse." Reginald hated to admit it, but he was right. "But we can't just leave him be." And then Voltergeist interjected, "Oh, I can assure you that my heart's not in it anymore with the whole villainy thing. I mean, how am I ever going to top that scene-stealing infliction of personal devastation from your own buddy chum? I'm not going to spend all my valuable time chasing first place in futility. Now, if you'll excuse me, gentlemen, I'm going back inside to watch Rugrats." Reginald sensed there was something paradoxical about this outcome, but then shrugged the feeling off. He continued to muse with Wingman for a little longer. What about my groin tingle that was the central impetus for my passion for crime fighting in the first place? Are you really going to tell me not to heed the call of my loins ever again? Reg, I think your reputation in this regard is probably starting to precede you now. I'd be surprised if many more cases of that particular kind of injustice continue to come up at this point. Reginald then took on all of the radiance of a sunbeam. So I have made a difference for my fellow insecure man, and have graced this fair land with a legacy. That's all I ever wanted. More to the point, all the bona fide babes out there really will come to regard me as the guy. I think I'm going to be just fine from now on. Wingman was going to gesture for a bro-fist moment, but then thought better of it. Simply seeing Reginald statuesquely basking in his own greatness, owning the moment despite the rain continuing to piss down on him, was more than enough.